Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head down to Italy once again for the first time in what feels like a good little while. So we're going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. These guys seem to be quite well respected in their local region. They brew a good selection of kind of more traditional style beers actually, and the one that we're going to look at today is a style that I've not had in quite some time, but it's a style that seems to be quite popular down in Italy. I've seen a few Italian breweries doing these, so I have to say that I'm quite curious about this one. So hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So let's see how we get on then. So for this review, we are going to head to a little place called Arcevia, which is in Marche in Italy. It's kind of in the middle, the central eastern part of Italy, I guess we could say, if we can say that. But yeah, we're going to have a look at my first beer from Birrificio Dei Castelli, or the Brewery of the Castles, as you might say in English. And this particular beer is called the Suave. It comes in at 5.3% ABV, and they're describing this one as a Blanche, or in other words, a Witbier. So yeah, this should be quite nice. I've not had a Witbier in quite some time, but this beer was released here in Sweden as part of the Tillfälligt, or temporary assortment. And I believe it came out sometime in about June or so. I've had this beer a couple of months actually, but definitely cool to have some more Italian beers to review for you here on the channel. So yeah, I do hope that we can get some more things from different breweries over the next little while, but we seem to be getting a fairly steady stream of things from different Italian breweries, so long may that continue. But let's see how we get on with this one then. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Birrificio Dei Castelli. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Italian beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Birrificio Dei Castelli. So Birrificio Dei Castelli, or the Brewery of the Castles as you would say in English, are based in Arcevia in Marche in Italy. It's kind of to the southeast of Firenze and quite close to San Marino, in fact, on the kind of central eastern part of Italy, actually. Not very far away from the coast when you look at the map. But the company was founded back in 2012 by Giovanni Petroni and Roberto Coppa. So Giovanni originally studied economics and management, and then he worked in these sectors, while Roberto, on the other hand, studied art, and he worked in this field. So two quite diverse backgrounds there. But the two were big fans of drinking craft beer, and then they homebrewed together starting in around 2004. They learned mainly from books that they found and blogs and things on the internet, and they also took a few different homebrewing courses along the way to kind of hone their skills, if you like. But they decided later on that they wanted to turn this into their profession. So they drew up a business plan, and then they opened up the brewery together in 2012, and they sold their first beers in April that year for Easter. The first beer they produced was actually Mirabilia, which, if I remember rightly, was a pale ale of some description. But originally they were brewing their beers in the kitchen of a disused restaurant, but in 2015 they were able to move into their current home and upgrade their equipment and install a 500-litre brew kit, and this gave them an annual output of around 450 hectolitres. They've continued to expand over the last few years, and these days they're producing around 1,100 hectolitres of beer per year. But as of August 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 25 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and like I said, it seems to be mainly more kind of traditional styles of beer that they do, like kind of Belgian style things, and there's a few German things in there as well, a couple of pale ales and stuff like that. But yeah, they've got a nice selection of different things at Birrificio Dei Castelli. But yeah, that is all the information I was really able to find on these guys. If you want to learn a little bit more about them, of course, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can, of course, check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So, yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we go. So, let's look at this. So, you can see the artwork on this one is pretty nice. This is a big 750 milliliter bottle, 75 centilitres. whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it certainly looks very, very nice. Yeah, I think in Italy you do get quite a lot of big sort of bomber type bottles like this, and I think the idea is that they treat beer like wine down there. You know, it's supposed to be shared, so quite a lot of breweries will sell their beers in these big 750 milliliter things. That is a thing that you'll find quite commonly amongst many Italian breweries, including the more popular ones. But yeah, you can see the bottle cap on this one, the Birrificio Dei Castelli. It looks quite nice. You've got the castle sort of rampart things on this. But yeah, you know, quite simple artwork, I have to say. But it is pretty effective, actually, quite tasteful. So yeah, 5.3% Blanche, this one, or a Witbier in other words. But let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm very curious to see what this has in store for us. Now, I think when I bought this beer, I've got a feeling that I paid somewhere in the region of about either 80 or 90 Swedish kroner for this one. Let's say 90, because that number just sticks in the head a little bit more. So I'm pretty sure I paid 90 Swedish kroner for this. So that translates roughly to €9 for the bottle, about £8 sterling, I guess we could say, and maybe somewhere in the region of, you know, $9.50 American, something like that. So for an imported beer and an imported bomber at that, that's not too bad. But you do have to remember this one is a more kind of session type, lower alcohol beer actually. But yeah, for the novelty of trying some Italian beers, I don't mind paying a wee bit more, and of course I'm going to share this one after the video. I do find it a little bit difficult to drink, you know, 750 mils of a kind of wheat beer, if you like. I used to be really, really into my wheat beers before I went to Germany, but then I discovered the Helles and the lagers and stuff like that. So after that, wheat-based beers became very heavy to me actually. But yeah, anyway, so you could see when this beer poured, it had about a half finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head. That has of course just faded away to be a very kind of thin foamy layer, and there is a nice little bit of a foamy ring just around the edge of the glass there. But there's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of the head there, and you've just got a little bit of a kind of foamy island sitting there in the middle of the glass. But as you can see, the colour of this one is a lovely, very kind of bright, hazy, blonde, golden yellow type colour. If I stick my fingers behind the glass there, you can see there is a decent level of haze to this one, but it's certainly not soupy and gloopy as you'll find from the likes of the New England IPAs and things like that. But yeah, it looks absolutely great. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This determines the magnitude of the colour. 2, the length of your wort boil is going to play a role as well, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer, which I really do like. But yeah, on the hoppy, you know, any other, I don't know why I'm saying hops, but on the other hand, you can get a little bit of influence from the likes of adjuncts and any barrel aging that you do as well. And this could theoretically affect a beer like this, but normally it's only type of malt and length of wort boil that are going to affect the colour of a beer such as this one. You only really need to care about those other 2 variables when it comes to sour beers and stuff like that. But yeah, this one looks as you would expect from a wit beer, a wheat-based ale if you like. But yeah, let's take a look at the aroma then and see how we get on with this one. Nothing else to report really when it comes to the appearance of this one. Nothing really out of the ordinary. So aroma time then, let's go for it. Yeah, that smells very nice. Just need to breathe out a little bit. Feel a little bit short of breath, oddly enough. But yeah, so the aroma of this one is, you know, very, very nice. I do like the aromas of these, of wit beers, to be honest with you. They've always just got a really nice kind of chilled out vibe about them, I have to say. So the backbone of this beer is a lovely, soft, pale malty, white bready kind of thing. You can really just smell that forming the backbone of the beer. And it is just very light and easy going, but it's got all these lovely kind of sweeter and slightly spicier wheaty characteristics to it as well. So yeah, the aroma that comes out of the character of this one is very, very nice, in fact. So yeah, but like I say, backbone of the beer I would appear to be a very kind of soft white bready character. Would definitely stick with that. On top of that, you can definitely smell a little bit of the more kind of thicker wheaty character in there. You get some of these kind of nice banana-y, clovey type vibes out of this one. The wheat in this beer comes across as being actually very smooth, but at the same time it gives you a lot of those kind of banana-like qualities. As I say, there's a nice little bit of a clovey kind of character to this one as well. It doesn't smell as if it's too heavy on the malty side of things, this beer, so I've got a feeling that this one might actually be very drinkable and sessionable and things. So yeah, it goes together very, very nicely. But you can certainly smell that the yeast is having a good little bit of influence in this one. At the back of the nose, you get a little bit of bitiness from the wheat, but you can also smell that slightly more airy and smoother, yeasty, white bready character coming out of this beer. So yeah, I think to sum up the malt base in this one, it actually comes across as pretty straight shooting. So yeah, soft, white, bready base. If you like a little bit of bread crust in there, there's maybe one or two very slightly woody undertones to it, but that is very, very minimal. On top of that, you can smell the slightly thicker wheat. There's a bit of wheaty bitiness in the back of the nose as well, but you've also got a little bit of that kind of smoother, yeasty, white bready character that comes out of this beer as well. Which is nice, and some banana and clovey notes out of this one. I don't know if I'd go as far as saying bubblegum in this one, but certainly the wheaty notes that you get out of this give you a lot of banana, and it's got a wee bit of pungency to it as well. I would say the more you smell of the beer, the slightly more pungent it would appear. But yeah, the aroma that comes out of this one, I think, is very, very nice. So thumbs up. It's a thumbs up for me, from me. In that regard with this one. So malty side of things is pretty much as you would expect. Let's focus on the hoppy and fruity side of the beer then before we taste it. So hoppy side of things, I think it's kind of what you would expect, to be honest with you. I'm not sure exactly what hops would be getting used in this one. I think the Italians do produce their own hops to a small extent, but I'm not sure exactly what they're called or anything like that. I'd love to try a few more Italian hopped beers and just get a proper feel for what these things are all about, because there is a bit of popularity behind the Italian pilsners and things at the moment, and this beer, in fairness, on the green component, it does actually have a little bit of that more kind of pungent hop character that you would associate with an Italian pilsner. But anyway, on the green side of things, you do get a little bit of a smooth earthiness in the back of the nose there. There's a lovely big bright floral aromaticity coming out of it. So yeah, I can certainly appreciate how that goes together, that's for sure. But yeah, the green component out of this one does, as I say, have a lovely brightness to it. It's not too pungent, and I don't think this beer is going to be overly bitter, but there's a lovely, very bright floral aromatic character at this one. It's not dank or piney resinous or anything like that, just a very bright aromatic floral character to it. But at the front of the nose, you've got a good little bit of grassiness in there. It's quite a wet grassiness, but at the same time you do get a fair bit of zesty character out of it. So yeah, that's quite nice in this one. Let's focus on the fruity part of the beer then. So fruity wise, this one's quite interesting, because I mean, you do get a little bit, from the yeasty side of things, as we said, there is a little bit of a nice kind of smooth banana type quality to this one, so I do like how that goes together. There's some really nice banana type like qualities in there. Yeah, the banana like notes that are in there are nice, and they kind of back up everything else. You get a little bit of a soft apricot in there. For me, I want to say there's actually quite a little bit of a lemony, I get quite a bit of a lemony zesty character to this one. So yeah, quite a bit of a lemony zesty note in there. There is a wee touch of a more oily lime, I would say, as well. But there's a few dried fruity notes. I mean, there's a good little bit of a kind of sultana type quality in there. So some apricot notes, I would say, a little bit of dried apricot, a little bit of kind of sultana, dried white green grapes, a little bit of kind of sweet banana behind that. Then you've also got some kind of peary, smooth kind of peary notes out of this one as well. Maybe a little touch of a spicy apple, but then yeah, some big lemony, limey characters in there. So quite a zesty, fruity component to this beer, I think. But it smells nice and very inviting. So as I always say, take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we have a taste of this one. So yeah, this one is the Suave, a 5.3% ABV Blanche or Witbier, whatever you want to call it, basically a Belgian style wheat ale from Birrificio Dei Castelli in Arcevia in Marche, in the kind of central eastern part of Italy. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers, and salute. There you go. Yeah, that's interesting. This is a very, very light, very just easy drinking beer. This one, it's almost a little bit like a table beer, actually. And to be honest, when you're talking about Italy, obviously you're talking about a country that is pretty warm, actually. And so, you know, this is the kind of beer that they want. They want something that's kind of easily drinkable, you know, light and crisp. And this beer delivers on that, but it's got, you know, as we say, it's a wheat beer. And normally you would associate wheat beers with being a little bit more kind of thicker and things like this. The German Hefeweizen, for me, I used to be able to kind of drink a few of those, but to me now I would always treat it as more of a tasting beer, and that would have been the same with a Belgian Wit. But this one, I could easily, if I wanted to, I could probably easily polish off this bottle without thinking too much about it. But yeah, I think this is nice. So thumbs up to Birrificio Dei Castelli for this one. They've done a solid job of this, absolutely. But yeah, I'm sure they've got a few beers that are more complex than this. I think this one is one that is designed for its drinkability, and it delivers on that. I'd love to try, if they've got an Italian Pilsner, I would love to try that from them, or a Helles, or something like this. A lager beer from these guys, I think, could be quite an interesting one, because you do have to remember the Witbier is an ale, of course. But yeah, I think this is pretty nice. So let's how do we say, let's kind of break down the flavour of this one then and explain it to you properly. It is quite a straight shooting beer, this one, but I think it does its job pretty effectively. So yeah, straight away then, when you go across the middle of your palate, you can feel that nice, smooth, pale malty, white bready backbone to this beer. That is the backbone of this beer. Absolutely, that's in the middle third and the back third of your palate. On top of that, you can feel the slightly thicker, wheaty element coming out of this one. And as you move towards the back of the middle third of your palate and into the back third of your palate, that's when you get the more kind of sort of clovey, spicy notes out of it. But when you move further forward, towards the front of that middle third of your palate, this is when you get the more kind of banana-y, sweeter notes out of it. And remember, you tend to get the more kind of grainy and bitter notes towards the back of your palate, and the further you forward on your palate you go, you're going to get sweeter and sweeter. And this beer shows that pretty succinctly, actually. You know, in the flavour of this one as well, you do get a few of these kind of bubblegummy elements that you can sometimes get from like Hefeweizens and Witbiers and stuff like that. There's certainly a wee bit of that in there in the middle of the palate, actually. But yeah, I think the kind of the crispness, this beer's got a really good balance between the crispness and the smoothness, and we'll come back to this when we look at the mouthfeel. But I do feel that there might be a little bit of Pilsner malt in this beer as well. I would not be surprised if there's a wee bit of Pilsner malt in this one. But yeah, let's focus on that middle third of your palate then. Let's break this beer down a little bit more. So as I say, the base of the beer is that soft, kind of crisp, white bready, pale malty note. On top of that, you get a little bit of the kind of smoother and slightly more thickening wheat quality out of it. Then as you go into the middle of that tongue there, you can feel the wheat is a bit thicker there. But then going from the centre of your palate towards the back of that middle third of your palate, there's certainly a more kind of crisp, pilsnery element out of this one, and I do like that. You certainly get a nice wee bit of Pilsner malt in there. But in the dead centre of your palate, there is like a little small circle. This one, it is, I would stress, a very small circle there, but there is a wee bit of a kind of slightly brown sugary element to this one, but it's quite light. It is a little bit like a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity note in there, and you can feel that in there. That's obviously covering up the boozy part of the beer. That's the alcohol coming out of it. But as you move out towards the kind of edges of that middle third of your palate, you can feel there's a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing there. And as you move further forward from the dead centre of your palate to the front, to that border region, you'll get a little bit more of a kind of banana-y sweetness out of this one, which I think goes together quite nicely, and a wee bit of that bubblegummy note, as I say. But I think that covers the middle third of the palate quite well, to be honest with you. It is quite a straight shooting beer. The only other thing we could say is that underneath that front half of the middle third of your tongue, there's a very slight woodiness to it. But yeah, it's nice. As I say, a very drinkable, easy-going beer, this one. But yeah, if we go to the back third of your palate then, so the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a bready build-up in this one. So you can feel that there, nice little bit of a white bready build-up there, a wee bit of a bread crusty quality, of course. But yeah, you can certainly feel that coming out of the beer, which is great. But then when you go into the back third of your palate, you get a nice little bit. You can feel the white bready base is there. You get the thicker wheat or wheaty quality there too. But that gets a little bit more bitey towards the back of the palate, and underneath the bitiness, you get a wee bit of a more kind of stronger bread crusty note there as well. But on top of all of that, you get the kind of more airy, yeasty component coming out of these beers. And wit beers for me have always been a mix of wheat and yeast actually, so that nice airy and slightly sweet white bready character that you get out of this one, I think is very interesting too. But yeah, I think this one is quite nice. It's got a little bit of bite to it, this beer as well actually. And the wheat, I think the more that you drink of this beer, the wheat actually does give the beer a little bit of kind of just pungency and zip, which I can appreciate too. So yeah, it's almost like this beer does have some of the kind of crispness and things you'd expect of a lager, and I do suspect that this beer has a bit of Pilsner malt in it. I would not be surprised at all with this one. It does say actually, I've just noticed on the back there, it says that it's got a little bit of spice in it, so I do wonder, I think there might be a little bit of straight up clove in this one. Maybe a wee bit of coriander actually, come to think of it as well. And I wouldn't necessarily have thought coriander, but quite often, yeah, they will put coriander in these wit beers actually. I don't know if there's a difference in particular between a Blanche and a wit beer, or if it's just the difference, the Dutch and French names, because Blanche of course is I think Blanche is the French name and the wit beer is the Dutch name. The style of course originates from Belgium, so yeah, but I think in fairness, yeah, in that border region, especially between middle and back third of your palate, that's where you get most of the kind of spiciness out of the beer, the clove, and I get what I'm guessing is coriander. So yeah, that's an interesting point to make about this one. But I think that's enough about the malty and yeasty side of the beer. Let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. So back corners of the palate, you've certainly got a nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, there's a little bit of a herbal quality, and as you push further forward towards the front corners of the palate, it's certainly got a little bit more of a floral aromatic note to it. Now, it could be a mix of kind of Italian hops, I think, or some kind of noble hop, and some kind of American hop. I wouldn't be surprised if this maybe has a little bit of like Centennial or something like that in it. Centennial would be a good fit for this one, actually, but you've got other hops obviously like Huel Lemon and Lemon Drop and things like that would be a good fit for this, because it is quite a zesty beast, this beer, the more that you drink of it. But yeah, the green component for me suits it quite nicely. Round the front curve of the palate, you've certainly got a little bit of a wetter, grassy note, but the further you go into the aftertaste, it builds up and gives you a wee bit more of a kind of zesty character. So yeah, I like what this one has to offer in that regard. But yeah, the green component of this one I think is quite nice, and it really gives the beer a bit of kind of zip, and I think that suits it. Yeah, interesting stuff actually. Maybe there is a sub-style called the Italian wit beer, a little bit more hoppy as the Italian Pilsner would be. But let's focus on that front third of your palate then. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again you get a little bit of a bready build up in there. There's a wee bit of a kind of zesty thing to it, and you've got a nice little bit of crispness as well, which I really do like. But the base of that front third of your palate, there's a nice kind of smooth white bready backbone to it. You can feel a little bit of the wheat creeping in there as well, but I would say that the prominent component of that, the backbone and the front third of your palate, is a soft white bready character. So yeah, but sitting on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters come out of the beer, and it's quite a wet fruity character that you get from this one. So at the back of that front third of your palate, mixed in with the bread, you get a slightly more concentrated lemongrassy, citrusy sort of thing. As you move further forward, you get a little touch of a kind of apricot-y note in there. You get a little bit of a kind of smoother apricot-y character, and you've also got a little bit of a more you've got a smoother kind of apricot-y note in there. Then you've also got these kind of sultana, dried white green grapey notes in there, sitting in that as well. So yeah, back third of your palate is the back half of that mid front third of your palate is a little bit more kind of dry and fruity, dried apricot, a little bit more dried apricot, a little bit more of a as we say, dried apricot, and a little bit more of that kind of sultana type note. But as you move further forward, you get a more oily kind of zesty character coming out of the beer. There's a wee bit, you get a good bit of a lemony citrusy sort of thing out of it. As I say, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a wee bit of Centennial in this one. because it's got a wee bit of that American hop zip to it. There are alternatives, of course. Apollo would be one, I think. Yeah, Apollo, lemon drop, Huel lemon, a few things like this. But Southern Cross actually would be another one from New Zealand. That'll give you a lot of lemony character. But yeah, it's kind of it's interesting from that perspective for sure. But yeah, big kind of lemony zesty notes on the front half of that front third of your palate, a wee bit of a kind of more oily lime sitting underneath, and there's also just a wee bit of that kind of spicy apple type quality to this one as well, just mixing in with the kind of grassy fruity esters on the tip of the tongue. But overall, this is a really very nice beer, this one. Certainly very crisp and very drinkable, in fact, but it gets a thumbs up from me, that's for sure. So well done to Birrificio Dei Castelli for this. This is a really interesting one, and it's quite different from the Witbiers that I remember having tried in the past. So yeah. Let's round off the review then with a look at the mouthfeel. So like I said, this is actually a very light-bodied beer for me. There wasn't really any sediment in the bottom of the bottle actually. When I look at it, there's a wee, there's a little bit there, but I don't think enough to really make a real difference to what we're getting in terms of the body. But let's humour this a little bit and see. Maybe I can see there's a wee bit of that. Yeah, you can see there is a little bit of that kind of coming out of this one, but I think we've kind of stirred it up a little bit enough, to be honest with you. But yeah, there's a wee bit more kind of haziness to the beer now. But let's just check that out to make sure that is completely accurate. Stirred it up quite a little bit in the flavour there, but you can see it's a little touch more hazy than it was. But yeah, there is a wee touch more body to it when you put a bit of the haze in it. But yeah, it's still quite a light and smooth, crisp beer, this one. So I would say that this beer is kind of top end of light bodied, bottom end of mid bodied. The carbonation, I think, does have a good degree of crispness to it, absolutely. And that's inherent with when you use these kind of yeasts in the beer. But yeah, it is a really nice kind of crisp and light take on the Witbier actually, and I think it goes together very nicely. So yeah, it gets a thumbs up from me in that regard. The mouthfeel really suits this one. In terms of IBUs, what would we say with this beer? So yeah, I think this is maybe about 25 IBUs, maybe 30. It does have a wee bit of zip to it on the edge of the palate there. Pardon me. Oh, I think I took a few droplets down the wrong way there. But the backbone of the beer is lovely and smooth. You've got a little bit of sweetness to it. You've got a good little bit of spicy character there as well. And the malt base has a little touch of sweetness and crispness also. So there's a wee bit of stuff going on in the malt base here, which I do like. But then you've got a nice kind of fruity zestiness to this one as well, which I really think just adds to the drinkability of the beer. So this is definitely one of the crisper and more drinkable wit beers that I've come across. But it's been a good while since I've reviewed something in this particular style. So take that comment with the necessary pinch of salt actually, because as I say, a long time since I've had a wit beer of any description, never mind an Italian one. I don't know if I've reviewed an Italian wit beer on the channel before, come to think of it. But yeah, I like this one and I wouldn't hesitate to drink it again, but I would say the 750ml of this is a little bit difficult. This is the sort of beer that I would enjoy kind of tasting for something a bit different. So, get this bottle and share it. Don't, you might want to drink it yourself, but for me, this is a sharer rather than a drinker. I'd be quite happy with, a 200ml taster of this or something. I would say that, but that's not any reflection on the quality of the beer. It's just me not being overly used to this style, of course, and finding wheat beers generally quite heavy. But yeah, I like this one, and I think we can round off the review there. So yeah, this one was the Suave, to give it the proper Italian pronunciation. A 5.3% wit beer from Birrificio Dei Castelli in Italy, from Arcevia in the Marche region in the central eastern part of the country. But yeah, really nice beer, this one. A very crisp take on the style, and I've certainly enjoyed this. So hopefully we can try a lager beer from these guys. I'd love to try like an Italian Pilsner from them if they do have one. So we'll see about that in the future. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media. Check out their social media. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know your favourite beers from Birrificio Dei Castelli. Give me some other Italian brewery and beer recommendations, and hopefully we can review some of those here on the channel at some point in the future. But thank you again for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Slange, skull, cheers. This one was the Suave, a Witbier coming in at 5.3% from Birrificio Dei Castelli. Slange, skull, cheers, and salute.